Are you ready, Ellie? This video is brought to you by my patrons, my thoughts and opinions, sparkling water, and birth control. Hello, and welcome to, or back to, my channel. I'm Kit, and on April 28th, 2025, conservative YouTuber Brett Cooper published the video JoJo Siwa changes her sexuality and Dylan Mulvaney flees America with a thumbnail, WTF is going on. And the next day, her friend, Religiotrad YouTuber Allie Beth Stuckey published the video Why a Baby Bonus is a Bad Idea with a thumbnail, Don't Do This. Do these videos have anything to do with each other? Not really, but I wanted to talk about both and they were too short to do on their own, and so you get a twofer. Please, well, enjoy might be drawing it a bit strong. Anyway, we'll start with Brett, and we're actually not going to discuss JoJo or Dylan, though I will say that if a woman dates a woman and then dates a man, that doesn't mean that woman is now straight. Bisexuality exists. Anyway, what I want to talk about is Brett's reaction to the World Economic Forum's new chairman ad interim, Peter Brabeck-Lamanth. And I want to be clear, this is not a defense of the WEF. There is a lot of criticism of this organization, and from what I can tell, it's well-deserved. As a general rule, I don't trust people with money to do the right thing for anything except their bank accounts. However, Brett is doing that word trickery thing again, and I have thoughts.
Now that man, his name is Peter, he is the former CEO of Nestle, and he believes that access to water should be regulated. Just take a listen.
There are apparently some misconceptions about my ideas on water. Let me make it clear from the beginning. I have always supported the human right to water. Everyone should have enough clean, safe water to meet their fundamental daily needs. About 50 to 100 liters per day. But not to fill a pool or wash a car. There is a difference.
So he believes in our free access to water, our right to water, but not really. Because there is a limit to how much he wants us to have. If we want to have a pool, nope, we can't have that. If we want to wash our car regularly, if you're somebody like my husband who loves going to the car wash, who basically goes to the car wash as therapy like 3 times a week, nope, not allowed. You have reached your daily limit. So it's enough to drink and maybe take a daily shower, but not enough to do any of those things.
So is Brett stupid or just uninformed? Yes, the former CEO of Nestle is a really poor choice for this message, and it does occur to me that conservatives do this on purpose. Nestle is stealing water, so you can't trust what anyone who's ever been connected to them says about it. But that doesn't negate the fact that water is a very big concern for our planet. And as things get worse, maybe not for us, but future generations will be lucky to have water for daily life, let alone for pools and car washes. Swimming pool, shower. Car wash, drinking water. Gee, such a tough choice. And you know, if we took climate change seriously, maybe we wouldn't get to that point, but
unsurprisingly, because this is usually how it works, Peter, he lives in a mansion. He has a couple mansions, and they all have huge pools. So once again, it is rules for thee and not for me. And WEF, we know, they say that they want us to own nothing and be happy by 2030, which apparently includes access to free water.
Is it hypocritical of him to speak that way about water and waste it himself? Absolutely. Does it change the fact that as climate change damages our planet, we'll experience water scarcity? No. As I'm sure you're all aware, climate change is a larger problem than any individual can solve, but that still doesn't mean we shrug our shoulders and say, well, the billionaires have swimming pools and private jets, let's just keep ignoring it. You can still be mindful of your own consumption, still vote, still organize. For anyone interested, I'll leave some links below about what individuals can do, and you know, Brett recently announced that she's pregnant. Does she not want her kid or kids to have a better world? A world in general? I'm so baffled by this attitude, but I guess it is easier. I think she's forgetting though that, well, for one, this Robert guy is in his 80s, so... And billionaires will always have a way of buying what they need. If water becomes $100 a bottle, they'll be fine. And sure, shit can really hit the fan and money will become useless, but that won't make things better for the non-billionaires. And I promise, billionaires will not be the ones first or most impacted. But you know what?
The Kardashians and other celebrities in their area went over their quote-unquote water allowance in the LA suburb of Calabasas, and so the government came in and installed flow restriction devices, which were able to turn off showers and landscape sprinklers and all different types of things in private residences. I mean, if they can do that to the likes of Kim Kardashian and Kevin Hart and Sylvester Stallone, they can do that to you and me. And it seems like this man is totally fine with that happening. No more pools, no more washing your cars. You can just have enough to drink, and that is free human rights. That's great. That is full access to water. That is the future that the new interim chair of the World Economic Forum sees for all of us.
Maybe it's just a government plot to control our access to water for reasons. Climate change? What's that? Anyway, moving on, I'm sure we're all aware that Trump would like to be known as the fertilization president. And so ideas are being considered for how to convince women to have more kids or kids at all, and one of them is a $5,000 baby bonus. Brett did have some thoughts on this as well. She thinks it's a good idea, but doesn't work. My thoughts on it are, $5,000? What's that going to do? But Allie Beth Stuckey, she has some thoughts.
The issue is, however, that we don't just need more babies. That's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is not the depopulation crisis. I believe the biggest issue is the dissolution of the family. And a much deeper issue is the lack of desire to have children. And that is something that is spiritual, that is cultural, that is moral. It is not economic.
Now, you might be thinking, but Kit, you just said in a recent video that the divorce rate is down and the marriage rate is steady, at least as of 2022. And there are studies that show people still want to have kids. And the Census Bureau is telling us that family households are still the majority. But you see, none of that is as much as they used to be. And that's a problem.
I don't care what people say. People say, oh, well, people can't afford housing today. People feel like they're so stretched thin with their budget. And all of that may be true. I'm not discounting that. And of course, financial problems can weigh heavily on a person and can and should, to some degree, determine the decisions we make. However, there have been much more difficult economic times where families have said, you know what, we are going to trust the Lord and we feel that it is our obligation and we desire to have children and we are going to figure it out. In much more turbulent times than today, not only throughout history, but in other countries right now. And I'm not just talking about women who get pregnant because they don't have any way to prevent pregnancy. I'm talking about people who say, no, we're going to get married. We're going to have children because this is the right thing to do. And because we want to do this. It's the most natural thing in the world. It's literally what makes the world go round.
So is Allie just stupid or uninformed? I think I see why she and Brett get along so well. Allie really thinks that 200, 300, so on years ago, people were intentionally getting married and having kids, even during the worst times on Earth because, well, they would just figure it out. I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure people married and had kids back then because that was what you did, that was how you survived. Back then, it was all hands on deck. Everybody worked, including the kids. And the gods know I hate to ruin her picturesque fantasy, but it's fantasy. I am very curious, though, about her source for this belief that people were actively choosing to marry and have kids back then, as opposed to actively making the choice to remain single and not to have kids, especially for women. And no, that doesn't mean I think life back then was all loveless drudgery, but I also don't think it's as Allie believes.
And so if you don't desire to do that, don't kid yourself that it's because you're too stressed out or you have too much going on or you are just going to wait until you're more stable when you're 35 or until you have more money. It really is because ultimately, for the most part, and if this doesn't apply to you, then it's not about you. But for the most part, married people aren't having children because they don't want to. And in large part, people are not getting married because they don't want to get married.
This is giving me flashbacks to Reagan's "wait until you're stable to have kids" is selfish, which is very easy to say when your situation is stable and you don't have kids. I've been the kid in the unstable situation, don't recommend. And you know, if people don't want to marry and have kids, that's fine. Instead of dwelling on that, Allie's time would be far better spent thinking of ways to make life easier for parents and people who do want to have kids, but have doubts. But, well, where is the moral superiority in that?
And so until we address why people don't want to commit.
You can commit without being married, and being married doesn't mean your commitment will be lifelong. You're just waiting, weren't you, Emily? You were just waiting.
And why people don't want to have children, and I honestly think the government cannot do that. I don't think the depopulation crisis is going to solve itself because, look, I don't want millions of more children who don't have present fathers and mothers.
It might be worth noting that Allie is a believer in children's rights to married heterosexual parents and conception in the marital bed. Anyway, infinite population growth on a finite planet was a bad strategy from the start, and we would be better served by figuring out ways to survive with a decreasing population. But why do that when instead we can...
Yes, I think that policy can speak to that in some way. And I am, again, open to proposals for that. But I'm not open to proposals that just reward people for having more kids, no matter their marital status. I'm just not. Like, I actually don't think that we should be rewarding that.
I have no idea what happened to the rest of the recording, so we're finishing up in voiceover. Anyway, like $5,000 was going to go so far as to be a reward. There's that Christian compassion. Anyway, Allie has been listening to Your Brain on Birth Control by Sarah Hill and, well...
And just how much not ovulating, because when you're on the birth control pill, you're not ovulating, how much not ovulating has an effect on you as a woman and how you think and what you are attracted to and the feelings that you have. Because God created our bodies to have a cycle that includes ovulation. It is not a coincidence that when you physically can get pregnant, because there are only a few days a month when you can do that, when you physically can get pregnant, you also find yourself wanting to get pregnant. Like you want to have a baby, you're thinking about babies, or maybe you find yourself wanting to be intimate with your spouse during that time. God created our bodies for that. And so when you take away ovulation, you also take away that surge of hormone that makes you start thinking about wanting to get pregnant.
Does Allie know there is a difference between wanting to have sex and wanting to have a baby? I'm thinking she does, but she's pretending they're one and the same for her purposes, which is that birth control is bad and women shouldn't take it.
And so you have all these women on the birth control pill who are not ovulating, who think, oh yeah, I'm just a go-getter boss babe and I don't want kids. That's just naturally how I am. I'll never want kids. No, you're just not ovulating. You're just not ovulating. You think you don't want kids. You think this is just a part of your personality. You think that this is just like innate drive. No, you're just not ovulating. And because you're not ovulating, you are suppressing the very real, natural, God-given instinct you have to commit to a strong man who wants to make babies with you. Okay?
No, not okay. And again, there is no conclusive evidence that birth control changes who a woman is or who she's attracted to, and you're much better off talking with your doctor about what birth control is right for you, if that's something you're interested in, than in listening to an influencer with an agenda. And this is really important, so I'm going to say it again. Talk with your doctor if you're interested in birth control. And if the option you're using doesn't feel right to you, talk to your doctor again. Keep talking until you find the one that's right for you. There's a lot of options out there and not everything works for everyone. And if you're not interested in birth control, that's totally fine. You know what's best for you. Please don't let internet strangers scare you into thinking otherwise.
The birth control pill,
does she know there's other forms of birth control besides the pill?
Has really suppressed like a core part of what it means to be a woman.
Wanting kids, having kids is a core part of being a woman?
And I think it is a huge reason why the birth rate has declined. Not because it is preventing pregnancy, but because it is preventing the desire to get pregnant.
And I think it's because we're seeing, for the first time in history, how many kids women have when they actually have the choice of whether or not to have kids. Anyway, Allie concludes that our priorities are out of whack and this issue will only be solved by hearts of stone turning to hearts of flesh. So, final thoughts. I wanted to comment on this because it was just so blatant. No, I don't trust billionaires to look out for the world's best interests, but we are heading for a water crisis. Trying to pretend otherwise isn't helping. And no, people aren't not having kids because birth control is convincing them otherwise. Also, there's a lot of reasons to use birth control, but has Allie considered that women go on it because they already know they don't want to have kids and they want to prevent a pregnancy from happening? That seems pretty obvious to me, instead of this bizarre idea that women are being tricked by the pill. Think horses, not zebras. And that's it for this video. Please feel free to share your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next one.